Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular meeting for March 4th, 2025. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everyone in the room to please mute your cell phones and other electronic devices. And I will ask Rob to do a roll call for attendance.
Thank you. Trustee Dahlman?
Here.
Trustee Albinson?
Here.
Trustee Dearborn?
Here.
Trustee Handler?
Here.
Trustee Orsic?
Here.
Trustee Apatow?
Here.
Here. Okay. After 8 years, that happens. Trustee Apatow has provided the required notice that he is unable to attend tonight's meeting due to work obligations. Excuse me. Our rules provide that Trustee Apatow may participate remotely unless 2/3 of the board objects. Is there any objection? Seeing none, Trustee Apatow may now participate remotely fully in the public and closed session meetings, and the minutes should so reflect. Trustee Dearborn has provided the required notice that he is unable to attend tonight's meeting due to work obligations. Our rules provide that Trustee Dearborn may participate remotely unless 2/3 of the board objects. Is there any objection? Seeing none, Trustee Dearborn may now participate remotely fully in the public and closed session meetings, and the minutes should so reflect. Okay, item 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will lead us tonight. Okay, quorum check.
Certainly. March 11th study session. Everybody look okay to attend? Okay. And then March 18th, Tina, I had you being out.
I might have a conflict.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, public comment. This is the time of the evening where anyone in the audience can come on up to the podium and share with us any item that is not on the agenda this evening. So, just to make it clear, hang with me one second. If you are here for the advanced metering topics, or if you're here for the engineering services for the generator at the water plant, those will come later. But if you want to talk to us about anything else, you're welcome to come on up to the podium and share your thoughts with us. Would anybody like to speak during this portion of public comment? Come on up. No, behind you, King. Come on. Yes, please. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm John Anderson. One of your residents invited me to attend tonight. I live in Wilmette, and I'm president of Greenleaf Advisors, a sustainability advisory firm, which I founded and built based on my experience leading Jones Lang LaSalle, the global real estate firm, for 18 years, and then the Nature Conservancy. And it advises on things like climate change and energy, which is why Tom invited me. For example, Don Webbles is on my board, a great leader in climate change, Nobel Prize winner. And I was just talking to Meredith over there. A lot of what drives us, by the way, is mitigating climate change. But we do it through solutions in energy that also deliver operating performance and financial benefits. I'm an economist and finance person by trade. So one of our partners, I actually manage a company, it's called Intelligent Generation. If your staff would like, I was talking to your gentleman over here, we work with a lot of leaders in energy, and we would encourage you on your consideration of IMEA just to study things. And happy to have people come out. And if you know Apt Electronics, we optimize their microgrid, their solar and energy storage. G&W Electric, we do the same in Bolingbrook. A number of utilities we're working with right now on the same for behind-the-meter distributed resilient energy. That plus purchasing from the grid, clean energy on the utility scale. So again, I just encourage you looking into those solutions for operating performance, good economics, and clean energy. The last thing I'll say is we hosted here, we're involved in the Energy Transition Forum. When Greenleaf hosted it, we had 3 or 4 of the major grid operators. We're members, by the way, at IG of PJM, the biggest in the world. But we had 3 other grid operators here and in Europe here on a series that happens between here and Europe every year with one of my board members that leads it. on the massive shift that's going into wind, solar, distributed energy, small-scale nuclear. It's truly the largest transition in the history of that sector in the world. Winnetka can be a participant to benefit. Please study it, and be a leader while benefiting yourselves. Those are my comments. Thanks for listening. And happy to, your colleague has my card, happy to let the experts come in and chat with your staff or your trustees. Last thing I'll say is I have read the reports that were given to Naperville and other communities. There's some really good consultants out there, excellent research. And that is available. We can share it with you. We just were told it's public. So we can share that as well. Good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share their comments this evening? Come on up, King.
Good evening, it's me again, King Poor, 735 Walden, and I'm not going to repeat what I did last time I was here, and that is talk about the need for some measure of humility when you're trying to forecast energy out 10, 20, or 30 years in a volatile market. Instead, I'm going to summarize the letter that we sent to the council last week with 4 words. Hear the other side. And what I mean by that is that we've heard from IMEA in 2 study sessions. We've heard from Mark Pruitt. And from them, we've heard about energy marketers, also referred to as energy suppliers, about what they supposedly can or cannot do. But what's missing in all of this is something crucial. You've heard about the energy suppliers from someone else, but you've not heard from the energy suppliers themselves. And what they have to say is important. And we know that there are a number of reputable energy suppliers, nationwide companies, that would be glad to speak to Winnetka. And a good way to do that would be in a study session where the council and all Winnetka residents would be invited to hear from them and ask questions. But to put together such a study session is going to take some time. And it cannot be done properly if you're rushing to meet this April 30 deadline. So we ask you to take your time. Take the time that you need to really hear the other side. Because to make a good decision, that's really essential. So that's it in 4 words, or a little bit more. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Would anybody else like to address council this evening? Oop, I can't see. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Meredith White. As you remember, I attended and spoke at the last Village Trustee meeting where you discussed the IMEA contract renewal. I'm here again today to stress the importance of considering this long-term consequences of signing this contract in April. I'm currently 15 years old. When this contract expires, I will be 45. I can't even begin to imagine what my life will look like then. So if I can't look that far into the future, how can you? How can you feel good about signing a contract today that has implications that far into the future? I doubt any of you here sitting tonight will be considering this problem 30 years from now, but my peers and I will. So I have come here again to ensure that you think long-term when you make this decision, because my generation wants to live on a planet and in a town as beautiful and vibrant as it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted, I know you were looking to come up.
Well, I'm going to change the tone. Hi, Ted Wininchenko. So last week I sent you guys an email essentially trying to explain that, I had made a mistake about the IMEA contract because I didn't read the whole thing before I sent my first email. And I lamented, that it changed in 2007, the village didn't get much for it. And, I kind of rhetorically asked why. And in response, I received an email. I felt kind of a little bit of a sarcastic response, saying that I should go back and find the village attorney, the village manager, the village president from 2007, ask them why they did this. And that was odd to me because I felt like my email didn't really attack the council on that, or the village on that issue. I was really just saying that as we move forward, we should really consider how we look at things, and we shouldn't necessarily agree to like a 30-year extension when we have no idea what's going to happen. But as I thought about it, I started to think to myself that yes, there are things I'd like answers to, that I could ask the current people that are leading the village. Why did the village give away village property to private individuals for no benefit to the village? When 25 years ago the topic came up, there was lots of discussion. The police did studies. They talked about the potential harm to children at New Trier, and there was a lot of discussion. During COVID, the property owners came forward. The village silently gave that property away for no benefit to the village. Why? The people that were involved in those discussions and that decision are here today. Why did the village choose to pursue a trespassing charge under village code against me along the lake? The more I've looked into this, the more I realized that the village had no way that they could have established that I had trespassed on anything that resembled private land. And we don't have to berate that or go beat that to death. But I guess when I think about it, in retrospect, I should have never hired the attorney because that just wasted money, and all he cared about was making sure that everything settled and got out of the way. But when I look back on it, it seems clear to me that there was really no basis for this. And I ask why? Why was the village so interested in supporting this, I would say, one-sided private individual's desires? Why did the village engineering department not step up and say, hey, look, you guys buried this concrete structure in the sand that you weren't allowed to? Why have you been doing these things? Why have you been ignoring this? So those are questions that I think I could ask now of the people that are here now, the people that are making those decisions and are responsible for those things now. So rather than going back to 2007 and sarcastically saying that I should reach out to those people, I'd ask, why are we doing the things we're doing and not supporting the public of the village?
Thank you, Ted. Before we go any further, I just want to clarify, because people might be confused about the agenda this evening. The issue of power generation that we're deliberating on this evening is not about our electrical supply to the community. It's simply we're beginning a study to understand how we generate power for our water plant. So if you're here to talk about IMEA and all this other stuff, that now would be the appropriate time for those comments. I don't want to make you wait all the way to the end of the meeting just to find out that that's not on topic for what we're deliberating. So I do have a sign-in sheet here, and if any of you on this sign-in sheet want to talk about the IMEA contract or anything related to that, then probably now is the time to speak, because the generator issue is kind of a sidecar issue in as far as our agenda is concerned this evening. So I'll just run down the list. Irene, do you want to talk about IMEA or something else? Okay.
I don't know if you could turn the volume up. It's a little bit hard to hear people back there. How's this? Is that all right?
That's good.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Irene Smith, 39-year resident of Winnetka. 3 years ago, in March of 2022, I first learned about the infamous louvers and planter pockets, which were going to be built on Centennial Beach at the request of the property owner of 205 Sheridan, Mr. Ishbia. It appeared that those plans had been made behind closed doors. As I attempted to get more information, I learned that the Winnetka Park District was unwilling or unable to give me further details about the plans. There were no minutes available to the public. There were no video or audio recordings of Park District meetings. Many of the plans for Centennial and Elder were discussed in executive sessions. The website for WPD was difficult to navigate. Since then, there have been changes. The WPD meetings are now videotaped. There's a new website. However, the only way I have been able to get some answers from the Parks Commissioners, former Director John Peterson, or current Director Shannon Nizal is through the Freedom of Information Act. The most egregious behavior I've observed at park meetings is the refusal of Commissioner Cotto to provide answers to members of the public at the public comments section of their regular meetings or any time later. When I started attending park meetings 3 years ago, the public had 4 opportunities per month to address the commissioners. We could speak early in the 2 monthly meetings and late at each meeting. Would you believe that we now have only 1 opportunity per month to address the commissioners? Only 1 meeting per month is designated a regular meeting. We are only allowed to speak early in the 1 regular meeting. The second monthly meeting is considered a meeting of committees. We are not allowed to speak then. President Cotto asks for public comment. Speakers are allowed 3 minutes each and are often cut off mid-sentence, and any questions from the public are completely ignored thereafter. Our questions and concerns die of neglect. I bring all of this to your attention because the Winnetka Park District's lack of transparency is what pulled me and many others into this quagmire in the first place. Trustees, you will be asked by the Park District, if you haven't been already, to accept an intergovernmental agreement. The WPD has appointed 3 members of a negotiating team, 2 who are not on the park board, and Warren James, whose term expires after April's election. Cynthia Rapp, a sitting commissioner, whose term is not up, offered to serve on this team, but she was rebuffed. The IGA will, if it succeeds, allow the Park District to bypass your 3 subcommittees. We know that the Zoning Board of Appeals voted unanimously to deny the park's request for a special use permit. Based on the 85 questions sent to Parks by the Plan Commission, it appears that they were also not convinced about the Centennial Plan. The Design Review Board has not yet met to examine the plans. I would urge you, trustees, you, those in the TVs there, not to accept the IGA. You have a rigorous process in place to address all projects in a public forum in a comprehensive and detailed manner. I see the Park District wanting to continue their work behind closed doors again. We need transparency from all our government agencies. The parks seem to be aligned only with the property owner at 205 Sheridan. A referendum would no doubt show that most of us do not want our money spent on such a wasteful and unnecessary boondoggle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irene. Tom?
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Barron. I live at 1284 Trap Lane. I've been a resident for 34 years. In 30 years, I'm not going to be 45. I'm going to be 98. So please hear me out if I may. I'm going to reiterate some of the things I raised at the study session. And I just want to, since then, I've been involved with King and some other residents in studying this whole IMEA issue and power purchasing situation. I just want to say one more time how important it is to take your time, make an informed decision. The experts that I've spoken to, among them John, who I've known for more years than I want to say, and others that we've spoken to who are working with energy providers, hardware providers, software providers in the energy space. You have been presented with what I would say is a false deadline of April 30th. Everyone I've spoken to has said there's no reason, the only people who benefit from that deadline is IMEA. You could wait as long as 3, 4, 5 years from now before signing on with another provider. And that would be plenty of time to, for them to prepare for the switchover in 2035. The other thing is the energy markets and the the energy hardware, the energy industry is changing so rapidly. It's going to be markedly different in 5 years when a decision should or should be made. It's going to be exponentially different than it is today. If you think about solar, solar energy is 90% cheaper today than it was 6 or 7 years ago. Other technologies are coming online. I work in the venture capital area where there's so many companies, innovative companies that are coming up with other energy solutions that are less expensive than coal, cleaner than coal, and as a resident paying an electric bill, and as a resident of the earth, there are so many reasons why it is just incumbent on the committee to please delay, take your time, and make an informed decision that takes into account finances, sustainability, resiliency, and all the other variables that you need to take into account. So thank you for your time. And thank you for all you do. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Chuck?
Good evening. I'm Chuck Dowding, 968 Elm Street. As I did the calculation, I've been here 48 years. I had brown hair when I first came, so a lot's happened since I came. I want to tell you how excited I am about the IGA initiative to open Elder for this swimming season. I think this is a great idea. This is a wonderful thing. I get really excited about this, but provided that the discussion is only about opening Elder immediately at a least cost. I urge the council to set some firm guidelines to prohibit any non-public discussions about the current SUP application for Centennial as it works its way through the public review process, or any possibilities for Elder, such as moving stormwater pipes and building large groins into the lake. The 25 February Winnetka Park District memo shows that they may be trying to move the camel, the Centennial SUP, into the tent after letting the nose of opening discussion about Elder in. Here are their words in their request for the IGA, which I found somewhat surprising. The Winnetka Park District team is now tasked with negotiating the necessary permits with the Village of Winnetka liaisons to facilitate the reopening of Elder Lane, that's fine, and Centennial Beaches, well, that's not Elder, for the 2025 season. Additionally, they will work on securing all zoning-related approvals for Centennial Park and Beach, as well as the Elder Lane Park and Beach. Well, it seems like this is the whole camel and not just the nose that I think we all really want to work on. I want to see kids in the water then. So I hope that they're not trying to do and get accomplished behind closed doors, which they cannot in public at this particular time. You know, I'll reiterate my favorite example of this, and then I'll sit down. You know, violation of the ordinance that provides for safe passageway to adjacent public land that must be provided within the parcel's own footsteps. Now, Peter Friedman at the beginning of the second ZBA meeting told the Park District in no uncertain terms that it was his opinion that 205's land south of the property line was private, right? That the Park District has chosen not to respond to this in any way that I can find in their answers to the 86 questions. I read it for 2 or 3 hours this afternoon. They did say that there were 3 options. One was secure legal determination that accumulated sand between Steel and Stone Groin is public land. Well, it strikes me that's already off the table, given the opinion of the village attorney. Second was secure easement agreement to ensure legal passage to reach steps up and over the Stone Groin given Ted's experience, I'm not sure that that's likely to be forthcoming. And the third one is what I think all of us would like to see them do, and that is relocate the sheet pile fence location to provide a pedestrian passway that in fact is within the parcel of land that is owned by the Winnetka Park District. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate all the time you folks are spending on this and will be spending on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Is it Tom? Yeah.
That's my given name.
It's B something. I can't read it though, Tom, sorry.
So my name is Tom Borders, and I live on Old Green Bay Road, and I've lived there since 1988. I want to talk about, real simply, just what people have referred to as the donation agreement between the Ishbia Foundation and the Park District. The full name of that agreement is Restricted Donation Agreement between the Winnetka Park District and the Ishbia Family Foundation for the Centennial Park Improvement Plan. I read this agreement, and I know the lawyers call it a donation agreement, but I don't feel like it's a donation agreement at all. Looks to me like it's a control agreement. It's a contract where control over parkland is handed over to the Ishbia Foundation in exchange for the paltry sum of $3 million for 50 years. Now, my guess is that for many people in this room, our hearts will have stopped beating before the restrictive covenant that goes with this donation, so-called donation agreement, expires. So, but I guess in today's environment, if the lawyers call it a donation agreement, then, you know, call it what you will. I'm not buying that. So, there's a couple of essential elements in this agreement that I think we can talk about because they're fairly easy to describe, they're fairly easy to understand, and it gets right to the heart of the problem. So the donation agreement, so-called donation agreement, there is an attached plan, which is the Park District current plan for Centennial. And it covers the pier, it covers the dog beach, it covers the fence, and other things. So for example, the dog beach, the agreement specifies that the dog beach has to be at the south end of the beach. Can't be anywhere else, has to be at the south end. And then next to that, there's a fence that extends into the lake. The agreement also provides that the Park District has to build a pier that extends out 240, 250 feet into Lake Michigan. So those are pretty extraordinary mandates. Doesn't seem like a good or a fair trade to me. So let's look down the road. 15 years from now, a new park district looks at the park and says, you know what, we made a big mistake 15 years back. We want to move the dog beach. Well, what's the answer to that? Wait 35 years. Just wait until the 50-year covenant expires. Let's say they want to change the height of the fence or shorten the fence so it doesn't stick so far out into Lake Michigan. Again, just wait. Forget the changes. What about the pier? What if the pier became, in the eyes of Winnetka residents, dangerous because kids were jumping off? What's the answer to that? Could they destroy the pier? Could they move the pier? Could they shorten the pier? No. The Ishbia Family Foundation controls what is going to happen to that pier. So if I look at this agreement, I think it's a dumb agreement. Somebody bamboozled, hoodwinked the trustees. You know, when I look at the agreement in my head, I just have to scratch my head. I don't know what to think of it. I can't imagine a good set of circumstances where this agreement came about. I want to read a couple of things in the agreement, and I'm almost finished.
You're going on 5 minutes. We're going to have to kind of
Okay,
roll it
okay.
along.
So the agreement says, no tangible benefit, goods, or services will be provided to the Ishbia Foundation. Okay, it says that, but I don't think it's true. The agreement says, the Winnetka Park District shall complete and sign a charitable contribution receipt acknowledging as required by the tax laws in form and substance satisfactory to the foundation. I've never seen anything like that. My guess is if that's put in front of the IRS, it's not going to pass muster. If it passes muster in front of the IRS, I'm Peter Pan. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Karatsas? Did I get that right? Oh, Mrs.? Jay Karatsas. Come on up.
I just want to, Joanna Karatsas, Providence Street. I've been a Winnetka resident for 30 years. I just want to say that at the last park board meeting, one of the commissioners said he wanted to re-educate or have time to educate members of other boards because things weren't going his way. You know, I don't think you need any more education. You can look at the plan. You can see that it's overscaled. The pier's overscaled. In my own opinion, the plan is it's a programming problem, not really a design. And the design is following a very poor program. And the programming problems are coming from side deals and compromises with the neighbor to the south. So that's all I wanted to say. And I don't think you need any more discussion or education.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out tonight. Susie?
Well, I am a Winnetka Park District resident and have a few decades on some of the people here of how long I've lived in Winnetka. I was born and raised here. So anyway, I will keep this very short. My concern is the reopening of Elder Lane Swimming Beach, separate from anything else, just the public request of the young families and teenage families of just having Elder safely reopened. There is underwater debris that needs to be removed. I have had some experience in removal of submerged navigational and swimming hazards in my career, and you have probably pieces of the old TB sanitarium that was demolished in 1969. Probably some of that rubble is still there. I was a park board commissioner in 1987, listened to all of the contractors explain what we needed to do with the high water, et cetera, et cetera. Also, we know that some of the neighbors put in some underwater submerged wave attenuation devices, which probably have failed by now, may or may not have washed into the Elder or Centennial debris pile. But my issue is we can remove these now. You can ask for to expedite through the Army Corps of Engineers and the IDNR, and there is a process which can be taken, and you can remove it now and get the safety issues out of the way, because you know you will have teenagers and other people going out into the water, as we've had in the past year or two, to unfortunately effect a rescue or two. And they don't know that there's underwater cement and pieces like that under there. They're going to their destination to rescue. But keep it simple and clear all of the debris right now in the federal waters of the Great Lakes, the Lake Michigan portion that is off of Elder and Centennial. Keep it simple. We don't need to go into intergovernmental agreements. We just need to work simply and directly with the Army Corps of Engineers and the IDNR, and they will assist us, and we can get that job done. Then you can go ahead with all your other projects, but let's get it safe on the lakefront now. And yes, I want Elder open for everybody. Thank you very much. And by the way, the public foots the bill, so we'd rather do it simply and safely. Take care.
Thanks, Susie. All right, that was the last person on the list. Is anybody else? Come on up.
Thank you very much. Latham Ain, I'm living on Scott Avenue. So I really appreciated the last study session. I thought that was very interesting, and I do appreciate the fact that I think you listen to us in the community and take what we say very seriously, so glad to be part of this. I found it particularly interesting when the gentleman from IMEA mentioned that with regard to Prairie State, they have done some feasibility analysis on carbon capture and determined that it's really not feasible. I thought it was good to hear that. I think looking at it from their perspective, they're not going to be able to sustain that plant beyond the mid-2030s. Coal plants of that size, they have horrendous liabilities. Coal ash, there could be litigation, there's public health issues, etc. If I was in their position, I would be looking at my options to try to do a life extension on that plant way into the future, kick those liabilities down the road as much as I possibly could. That would be a viable strategy for them. And I think that's why they're really pushing to get these commitments from the municipality, to get leverage to discuss with the state that they need to be exempted from compliance with the Clean Air Act, etc. The question would be, what's in it for us with all of that? And I don't think there really would be anything in it for us. It might help extend the life of that coal plant and serve IMEA's interests a little bit. But to borrow a phrase that we might have heard used frequently on the 5:30 news recently, we have all the cards in Winnetka. I think that we could be in a situation, if we would just pause and consider some alternatives to the IMEA, where we might be really excited to see that technology's moved on and there are great alternatives out there that can lower our cost, improve our reliability, and give us a cleaner alternative. So in a closing comment, I wonder if I could just share some of that optimism with you and reinforce King's point that it would be really to our significant benefit if we would just consider some of those alternatives. I suspect they'd be really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Last call. Seeing none, I will now close public comment and we'll move on with the meeting. Thank you, everyone. All right, the next item on the report is, on the agenda this evening is trustee reports. We'll start on the TV screen. Bob, do you have any report this evening?
I do not, Chris.
Rob, do you have any report this evening?
Not tonight, Chris.
Okay, Tina?
Nope.
Kirk?
I do. Just want to make a comment. I had a water main break on Foxdale right in front of my house last week. So I had front row seats watching all of our wonderful village staff from water and electric, streets involved, and it was impressive. So hats off to the entire team at the village for doing such a great job fixing all these water main breaks. And I know we're not alone on Foxdale with 2 water breaks. I know there's been a number throughout the village, but just please pass on to staff impression and appreciation.
Well, wait until you get the invoice.
Ouch. Kim?
No report.
Bridget?
No report.
Okay, village attorney? Village manager?
No report this evening.
Village president. I had a statement tonight, but I'm talking to an empty room. So I don't know whether it's worth it or not. at this point in time. I think I'll go ahead anyway because there's been a lot of chatter out there in the community, and I think it's important that we hear faulty messages all the time regarding information of what's going on and how process works and all these other items, particularly related to the Winnetka Park District. But I feel like people aren't understanding that there is a legal process that must be followed that ends up right here at this dais, with the 6 people sitting on either side of me voting yes or no on whatever the item happens to be. And until that happens, nothing happens. It's just that simple. But the concern about the Winnetka the Winnetka Park District comments were unnecessary because nothing can happen at Centennial until Village Council approves a special use permit, period. There's no path to circumvent the approval process. A path does not exist. People can wish this stuff all they want to, but there is no path that allows an applicant to avoid going through a special use process permit that includes reviews by our 3 lower bodies, the Plan Commission, the Zoning Board, and the Design Review Board. It doesn't matter what's being said by board members over there or the community. The rules are the rules. They're not suggestions. They are the law, and the law will be followed. Now, just to reiterate, no single individual has the authority to dictate process. Not me, not Kirk, not Bridget, none of us. Statements made by WPD board members do not represent, nor do they modify the existing processes, and certainly Village Council has not shown any indication that we intend to act outside established channels of approvals. An IGA would not be appropriate for a project that doesn't contemplate modification to village-owned assets. The only time we do an IGA is when we're either modifying somebody's assets to our benefit or they're modifying our assets for their benefit. That's what the agreement is about, because we're utilizing each other's property. In absence of that, there is no IGA. We can have a memorandum of understanding or a letter agreement that says, hey, we understand you're doing something, but those are things that do not rise to the level of any sort of a permit. The Village of Winnetka has no authority to dictate the terms or conditions of any agreement that the Park District has entered into. We all need to understand that WPD is a separate taxing entity with its own elected board. It's unfortunate there's an expectation that WPD actions can somehow be appealed and modified by the village. We're not their big brother. You know, we can't slap them on the hands and send them back to to Hibbard Road and tell them to go do things. They were elected to take care of the assets related to the Winnetka Park District. We can't modify those. Of course, actions that are taken that violate standing ordinances, but you know, are a completely different story. If they're doing something illegal based on our ordinances, then we step in. But to this date, I haven't seen anything that would rise to that level or would raise it to the concern that we would have to bring that to Village Council. The Park District and the community are desirous of opening Elder. The modification of village assets are a key component for that facility. We have our stormwater discharge and a pipe running through the park. We have assets on that particular piece of property. In order to ensure that all parties, including the public, understand the limitations involved with this endeavor, we will need to come up with an agreement that council can act on. The approval process does not change. If improvements rise to the level of a special use permit, then it has to go through all the approvals. But that's not what has been spoken about at Elder. What's been spoken about at Elder is really what Susie just said. Clean it up, make it safe and usable for the public this summer. This is no different than the scores of IGAs we have negotiated during my tenure, if we do move in that direction on Elder. It has nothing to do with Justin Ishbia or his offer to fund any sort of portion of Centennial, despite what's been suggested by some. If Village Council sees fit, a collaboration between the village and the Park District could aid in finding beach solutions over at Centennial that address the various concerns that have been raised over the past several years. That wouldn't be an uncommon activity. It would be a very public activity. Many meetings and public and presentations in multiple venues only served to increase public input. When we did this on stormwater, it was like a roadshow. We went to school board meetings, park board meetings, county board meetings, forest preserve board meetings, high school board meetings, and all of them were public, and we presented time and time and time again, took public comment, and made adjustments on the fly. That's a good process. And that's a process that could work for the Park District if the participants were willing to go in that way. I'm not suggesting that that opportunity exists today, but that particular process still would not circumvent any of this public approvals. All of the things we went through, we had to go through Plan Commission, zoning, and design review when necessary. Nothing changed. It was simply because we had to have an agreement to work on the assets of another body. This could serve as a process that would be the reset that needs to get this thing back on track. Personally, I believe a working group of council and WPD board members could ultimately find the sweet spot and would include many public opportunities to weigh in, very similar how we move streetscape forward. Actually, very much like it. The Park District has been historically challenged with the village processes. Anybody who's been around this town for any amount of time, just think about it. Hubbard Woods, Dwyer Park, Skokie Playfields, they were all very poor showings. I don't know how to say it without swearing, so I won't. But they were horrible. The Park District doesn't understand the process. They come into this room expecting that they're going to just walk through approvals, and of course, the public, being frustrated, comes here and shares their comments, and then all of a sudden we get things worked out. This isn't anything new. Their ignorance of our process occurs regularly. And we are obligated to help them understand it and help them through it just like we would any other applicant in this village. We don't need to be aggressive. We don't need to be angry. We don't need to be, personally involved and demeaning people and things of that nature. We should be able to get together and work together for solutions that are satisfactory to the entire community. I personally am interested only in bringing forth public improvements that bring our lakefront up to the 21st century standards. Right now, the current conditions are not supportive of the heavy investment we make in our homes. We have these beautiful homes, we spend a lot of money maintaining them, and our beaches look like third world. Kind of sounds like our downtowns 10 years ago, right? Same thing. We have to move the ball forward. But doing it in a manner that's acceptable to all the community is a really important component of that, and the Park District hasn't understood that. I'm looking for ways that we can possibly help them move forward and get this thing done. With respect to Ishbia and that whole circus, the village has nothing to say about that. It's not our deal, it's not our property, it's not our funding resource, and we don't have any dominion over what the Park District does and how they fund their projects. So it's something we need to step away from and recognize that our purview is in running things through our ordinance process and either approving or disapproving with improvements that are based on the standards that are contained in the various bodies reviewing standards. So, getting a little tired of it, to be honest with you folks, but at the same time, I just wish that the Winnetka Park District would take the time to understand the standards that we assess projects on, and then start to think about how they incorporate those things into their thinking, their planning, and their execution of their new project. And that's all I got. So moving forward, we shall move forward finally with the establishment of the consent agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove an item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Bob, tell me you're not raising your hand. Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
That's a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Now we'll find out why I have Rob read the consent agenda. Rob, will you please read the items on the consent agenda?
Putting a lot of pressure on me here. Okay. Approval of the village council minutes for the February 11th, 2025 study session. Approval of the warrant list dated February 14th, 2025 through February 27th, 2025 in the amount of $1,649,395.83. Resolution number R21, 2025, approving a non-exclusive license agreement for the use of Elm Street train station parking lot and station park for a farmer's market. Resolution number R22, 2025, approving an outdoor dining agreement with Paradise Foods, LLC for adoption. Resolution number R23, 2025, approving an outdoor dining agreement with Good Grapes, LLC for adoption. Resolution number R26, 2025, awarding a contract to Sunrise Tree Care Incorporated for Dutch elm disease prevention. Resolution number R27, 2025, approving a professional services agreement with American Structure Point Incorporated for the design of the Hubbard Woods parking structure repair. Resolution number R29, 2025, waiving bidding and approving employee leasing agreements with MGT Impact Solutions, LLC for temporary staffing services and approval of an outdoor seating area permits.
Wow. Thank you, Rob. I would have never gotten through that. All right, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved. Second.
That's a roll call vote.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Alvinson?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. Moving forward, ordinances and resolutions. Item A this evening is resolution number R24, 2025, rejecting all bids, waiving bidding, and approving an agreement with Honeywell International, Inc., DBA Elster Solutions, LLC, for advanced metering infrastructure, and this is up for adoption. Tonight, council will consider an agreement for the implementation of advanced metering infrastructure project with Honeywell International, and will consider the financial projections and funding mechanisms. Water and Electric Director Nick Narhi and Finance Director Tim Sloth are here tonight to present and answer our questions. Take it away.
All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right, so I'm just fighting through a cold, so bear with me. Hopefully I don't run out of gas here. So good evening, Council, President Rintz. This evening I have with me Assistant Director Sam Carrasco, Finance Director Tim Sloth, and Assistant Finance Director Del Duckworth. We also have Kyle Kopchik. He's with Power Systems Engineering, PSE. They've been with us from the start, helping us work through this process. So got a good team here tonight. So on the agenda, I'll cover the project background, kind of how we've gotten to this point, talk about the RFP evaluation process, how we got to Honeywell, Honeywell's proposed solution, what an AMI rollout is going to look like, the benefits that we're seeking from this project, and then Tim will cover the financial impacts, efficiencies, and benefits, the overall project budget, and lastly, we'll seek your direction. So just real quick, this is the background of the project. We started this back in 2022. We executed a professional services agreement with PSE to help us explore this project. We had a study session in May of 2023 to better educate the council on what exactly AMI would look like, the benefits, what the rollout would be. That project advanced in the 2024 budget in November of 2023. In January of last year, we released an RFP for a turnkey system, so a full deployment turnkey system. Through February of May, we evaluated those proposals. We had interviews conducted with some shortlisted candidates based on RFP analysis assisted by PSE. And then through June of February of this year, we were in contract negotiations with Honeywell, finalizing the product that you have before you tonight. So I want to acknowledge the work that PSE, Water and Electric, and the Finance Department did these past 7 months to work diligently to get the best product in front of you. There was a lot of back and forth with Honeywell, making sure that we got exactly what we asked for in the RFP. So took a while to get here, but we're happy that we're here presenting this to you tonight. So regarding the RFP evaluations, we had 5 vendors submit responses for a turnkey solution. Proposals were evaluated on the following metrics. I won't read through them in detail, but pricing, simplicity of the system, project management, how easy it is to tie into our existing systems like Tyler, what we use for utility billing, the long-term life expectancy, how long can we expect this system to be in service, and that analysis boiled down to 4 vendors who presented to Water and Electric and Finance staff. We had presentations in this room with those vendors. They gave us their pitch. We took that feedback and shortlisted the vendors down to 3, Honeywell, Core & Main, and Wesco. Core & Main and Wesco are distributors. They propose solutions by manufacturers Sensus and Tantalus, and Honeywell is the manufacturer and who's providing the meters. So the RFP, there was a lot more that went into this than just this simple table, but I just want to boil it down for you just down to the facts. So overall, all the factors went into a matrix that spit out this score out of 10. So Honeywell Software as a Service, SaaS, scored the highest, 7.91 out of 10. You'll notice that the 3 solutions, the 3 companies, all were evaluated on a SaaS solution. We asked for quotes for an own and operate solution, which would be where the village has its own dedicated servers in the village to hold that data, meter data. Overall, the SaaS solution is a better solution long-term, as lower costs, and you shift the responsibility of maintaining your servers, doing patches, security upgrades. That gets shifted to Honeywell. Those servers are maintained on a Honeywell network, and you kind of shift that responsibility away from the village, and it does have a lower cost long-term. So we only looked at SaaS solutions for our short list. What really separates Honeywell apart from the other vendors is that Honeywell's solution is 100% cellular. The other solutions are what's called a mesh system. So the meters communicate with each other. They communicate with other collectors on the system, and then eventually that has to get back to the village, typically with a fiber connection. What that means is that the Honeywell solution doesn't require any additional infrastructure. We don't need to put an antenna on the public safety building, the power plant, this building. There's no fiber optic being run throughout the village to support this. It works just like your cell phone or any other device. It comes back to the village goes back to Honeywell into the village over a cellular connection. Standing up these systems with these other vendors, Wesco or Core & Main, would have required us to install antennas, possibly outside of our corporate limits, down in Woodley or Longmeadow, that area, which would have been difficult. So the Honeywell solution really kind of fits that niche of providing good coverage as well as being able to play outside the corporate limits where we need to. We also looked at the total upfront cost versus the 15-year cost. You'll see total upfront cost for a 2-year deployment for Honeywell is just over $4.5 million. Total 15-year cost is just over $5.4 million, which I'll let Tim cover later on. The vendors took different approaches to how they structured their costs. Some had most of the cost in the upfront deployment and then had lower costs long-term. Some had lower upfront costs and longer total costs, but overall, we felt Honeywell was the best and lowest cost solution for the village. So background on Honeywell, I probably don't need to talk about them very much. They're a household name at this point. They're a Fortune 500 company with over almost 100,000 employees. They're a leader in the energy sector and sustainability solutions. The package they're offering has a connected utility solution and service, analytical software, as well as doing the full meter installation themselves. So it's going to be a contracted service. It's not village employees installing the meters. It's a turnkey solution. They have a strong history of AMI deployments. You can see some vendors down here. We did do our due diligence in terms of performing reference checks for other municipalities that have used this particular cellular solution. We did get good feedback from those reference checks. So the Honeywell solution for Winnetka, what it's going to look like on the electric side is approximately 5,000 new electric meters, which again all communicate over cellular. So every electric meter has its own little cellular modem in it. On the water side, it's about 2,800 new Sensus iPro water meters. This is the village's standard meter already. So we benefit from having about 1,500 meters already on the system that are already AMI compatible out of the box. So this represents a saving for the village, where about a third of the system is already ready for AMI. We just have to add this little module you see here, this gray box. That connects via a wired connection to the meter, which allows it to communicate over the cellular network. So good opportunity there. As I mentioned, the communications is 100% cellular. So there'll be about 9,300 cellular meters / modules. Again, no additional infrastructure is needed to stand up in the village. This can stand on its own. We have commitments from Verizon and AT&T for coverage on all of these meters, including those meters that are in unincorporated Cook County. This communication operates in a licensed spectrum that has an agreement until 2045, so long beyond when we project the financial projections for this well into the future. The batteries themselves in the water meter modules, which again is this gray box, have a 20-year, up to a 20-year life. It all depends on how much data you want to bring back and how frequently you want to bring it back. Obviously, more data, more frequent is more communication, which lowers the battery life. So the maximum would be 20 years. We may find some sweet spot based on the amount of data we want to bring back. All this information is carried over Verizon or AT&T's network with carrier-grade encryption and cybersecurity. So we have very low concerns about the security of the meter data. And it uses less data than a text message. So this is communicating on the 4G wavelength, not the 5G wavelength. And from what we've been told, it's again, less data than a text message over their network. And just so you have a sense of what it's going to look like, on the water meter side, again, the electric meter is the electric meter. That's not going to change. For the water meter, residents will have this box on the side of their house. It's about 6 by 6, a cube. I have it here compared with a box you likely already have on your house if you have Comcast or AT&T service. They install a box on the side of your house to make their terminations for your point of service. So it's comparable to those in scale, so not super significant. Contract highlights, like I said, we've done a lot of due diligence on this, and we've been able to get a good product here for the village. It's a 15-year agreement, mass meter deployment in years 1 through 2, ongoing system support throughout the life of the contract, so we'll have support for all 15 years, guaranteed data storage for 3 years on a rolling basis. The reason for that is we want to be able to have that data for us or for a resident if you want to look back. We don't want there to be a cap on, well, 3 years is a reasonable cap, but how much data you can access. We don't want that data to disappear every 6 months. We'll get access to Honeywell's Fax BI, which is a business intelligence suite, to help us leverage that data for residents or for village business. This is really important to us. We got a 99.5% on-demand read success rate and 100% read success within 3 days. So what that effectively means, if someone in finance were to click a button, you would get 99.5% of the reads, which is, at the end of the day, this is about capturing revenue for our services. So we have high expectations of this system. And lastly, residents will have access to an online customer portal, similar to someone who lives in ComEd territory, where you would get real-time information on your consumption and historic information as well. So our anticipated rollout with an approval this evening would look something like this. Again, you can see where we've been and where we are. Assuming approval of this contract, we would begin the process of a phase 1 pilot deployment, which we expect to take about 6 months. We're talking about installing a small subset of the meters to stand up the system. It doesn't take much to make sure that, again, the data is getting where it needs to be. It's not just going to Honeywell, it's going to multiple other spots to make sure everything ties together, utility billing, namely. So we anticipate about 200 meters. Those could be institutional customers, village meters, other taxing bodies that would help us, low intrusive type service. Again, when we can target geographically areas on the northern border or southern border to, again, make sure we're getting that good coverage that we've been committed to. Assuming a successful phase 1 deployment, we would move into full-scale deployment, which would be late 2025 through the end of 2026. This would be all about 9,000 meters replaced in a mass deployment with the contracted service. We're also seeking tonight approval to move forward with an implementation contract with PSE, Power System Engineering. PSE has been with us from the start. Since 2022, PSB has been with us, working with us to get this product to you tonight. For typical reason for engaging a consultant, we don't have the expertise or the bandwidth in-house to help manage this project. So PSC the goal is to have PSC with us for the next 2 years to help us make this a successful rollout. Contract highlights for PSC would include project management, technical support, training, and making sure we're adhering to industry best practices and compliance. Okay, so why are we doing this? What are the benefits we're seeking from AMI? There's quite a few. This is a short list, but there's quite a few involved. So automating the move-in, move-out final read process. Currently, that's a manual process that requires rolling a truck, quote unquote. Faster identification of customer-side service leaks. So if you're a snowbird and you're in Florida during the winter, and the village will have the ability to generate a report that says, hey, you've used water every day for the past 4 days. Wouldn't even have to get to that point. Even 24 hours is enough to know that there's a problem. We can be proactive in notifying that resident, hey, you may have a leak in your house. You might want to have someone go take a look at that. Implementation of an outage management system is something we're really looking forward to. We currently rely on customer calls, or if the PD is on the street and they see a tree come down on power lines, that's how we get notified of outages. With smart meters, we'll be able to know down to the meter which residents are out, which will be a major improvement. Eliminating bill estimating for providing more clarity to customers, getting better billing data to those customers to make better reports, and lastly, greater detail into customer consumption for the purpose of rate making. So when we make rates every year and bring them to you during the budget, we're using averages, just a big chunk of data. There's not a lot of granularity past the customer class, residential, commercial. With smart meter data, there could be potentially other rate components, time of use, that the village could leverage for billing its customers. So AMI kind of opens the door for those possibilities. So last things I'll cover before turning it over to Finance Director Tim Sloth is specific improvements on the utility side. On the electric side, moving to smart meters really allows us to go towards a true smart grid. It's really a 21st century solution. We can monitor our loading in real time. If we know that there's, say, 6 residents on one transformer and that transformer is getting overloaded during a hot summer day, we'll know that before it fails, and we can preemptively upgrade it or change it. So that's a major benefit. We can look at how interconnected solar customers are pushing power back onto the distribution system and make sure that we're taking the right steps to maintain reliability for the rest of our customers. We can detect backfeed on the meters during outage events. So when the power is out, we try to avoid that, but when it is out, a lot of customers have standby generators. If your ATO, your transfer switch, is not set up correctly, you could send that power back onto the grid, which if there's a line worker working on the pole, that's a potential hazard because they're assuming the lines are dead, but you could be backfeeding onto the system, which is something we want to avoid. And lastly, flagging potential theft or meter tampering. So the meters have the ability, there's an accelerometer in there. If someone is up to no good and they tilt the meter to bypass it or remove it entirely, we'll get notified of that. So that's a major benefit. And on the water system side, again, assist with pressure management. We'll be able to look for transients in the system, address any low pressure complaints with residents preemptively, and again, identify potential leaks, which is a major improvement. Decrease our unaccounted water loss throughout the system. So by state mandate, we have to shoot for a certain target of our unaccounted water loss, which is how much we take out of Lake Michigan versus how much we sell. With improved accuracy, we expect to see a shortening of that delta. And lastly, potential remote disconnect, reconnect options, and alerts if there's potential theft of water, similar to electricity. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Tim Sloth.
Thank you. So I'm here to discuss the financial impact of the AMI project. With the AMI project, we anticipate we will realize many financial efficiencies, including increased revenue through higher meter accuracy, and also cost savings due to the elimination of final reads, turn-ons and turn-offs, and staffing efficiencies through automation. Included in the staff report is a 15-year payback analysis, which the analysis compares the cost components of the project to various budget offsets. The cost components are broken down into the capital and operating costs, with the capital portion of the project totaling $4.15 million, and with those costs occurring in the first 2 years of the contract. The operating costs include the initial software setup, consulting services, and then taper off in 2027 to only include the recurring software and customer portal fees. The biggest driver of the budget offsets is the staff efficiencies, which we estimate generate $4.7 million in savings over a 15-year period. In total, by proceeding with this contract, we anticipate a return of our investment in 13.5 years with a total budget savings of a little over $600,000. The AMI project was included in the 2025 5-year CIP with a total budget of $4.2 million, being funded out of the water, the sanitary sewer, the electric, and the general fund. The capital portion of the project, as I mentioned earlier, totals $4.1 million and is in line with the budget presented in the 2025 5-year CIP. Finally, the impact to the general fund. So as we showed, the AMI capital expenses were distributed among multiple funds, but the savings with the project predominantly impact the general fund. So we estimate the net impact to the general fund of savings of $4.1 million over the next 15 years. So the total upfront expenses within the general fund were $550,000, and then the savings from the elimination of the two meter reading positions generate $4.7 for a net of $4.1 million savings in the general fund. And it should just be noted that Human Resources is actively working with the impacted employees. They know this change is coming, and we're working to identify continued employment opportunities throughout the village. So that just brings us to our recommendation. So we recommend that the council approve the two resolutions associated with this project. Resolution R2425, 2025, approving an agreement with Honeywell not to exceed $5,282,529, and Resolution R28, 2025, approving an agreement with PSC not to exceed $112,000. So with that, if there's any questions for Nick or I.
Yeah, the 15-year term, can you talk a little bit about, in today's world, that seems like a long period of time. Can you talk a little bit about the term and why it's set at 15 years?
Sure. The term was set at 15 years based on the expected life of the meters, hoping to get to 20 years, and having the software and the equipment guaranteed for that long, so that we'd have actual support for the project the entire time.
So what happens in year 5 if there's a huge technological upgrade or they find a flaw with their system? Would the warranty require, or the contractual requirements require Honeywell to replace the meters?
Yes, there's various warranties within. The meters are warranted for 15 years.
Okay.
And there is coverage from included in the contract.
And then my only other question was, with AMI, would we be in a position to then start charging higher rates during higher usage on the electric side and on the water side? Or conversely, many utilities charge less if people charge their cars at night or they run their dishwashers, at night. Will there be that sort of ability to titrate rates?
There might be a greater ability to do that with this system. We would get more detail on the actual rates and usage. So there would be some ability to be able to do that.
Okay, thanks.
No, I just wanted to say, Nick and Tim, it looks like really you have paid such close attention to all the details, from evaluating the 5 vendors all the way through thinking of the future placement of the meter readers. So I really appreciate the time that went into this. Thanks.
Got a question. I'm looking at the public benefit of this. I love the idea of leak detection. I'm not sure how many times it happens. I had one at my house during the winter. I was home, but I still have no idea what was going on. And is there a way to set in this new system to say if you're like an automatic level, if you're 10% above your normal usage, it triggers something, so something automatic? So I'm just looking for a real resident benefit that we can point to as well.
So there is a customer portal that residents can access to monitor their usage. As far as on the leak detection side, the village would have the capability to have more advanced leak detection abilities with the new system. Because we'd be able to monitor usage on a more regular basis, in 15-minute increments, versus, the current read cycle is, the guys walking the street and getting a read once every 2 months. That's the key for getting the leak detection, because as soon as, most people do not have continuous water usage, for 24 hours. So as soon as it hits that point, it would generate various alerts.
Yeah, I never knew even mine happened, and it happened over 4 months in the winter where something broke and nothing was relayed to me, nothing proactive. I'm just looking, since we're spending this money and getting this new system, is there a proactive way to look at this system and say, okay, if it's 10%, it automatically generates something to the homeowner that you may have an issue. You should check it.
Yes, there will be that through the customer portal.
Okay.
What about remote shut off? Would the system, if you are seeing that and you're seeing an unusual 24-hour, 48-hour event, would you be able to shut it off from the exterior of the house?
I don't think so.
That's a functionality we could consider adding. The benefit to having our full-time staff here is that if we were notified of that, our staff would go out and use the shutoff at the property line to take care of that, assuming the resident wasn't home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris, can I ask a couple questions real quick?
Oh, sure. Sorry, Bob.
Yeah, sorry about that. And I don't know, Rob, if what you were thinking of was, you go away to Florida, whatever, you can tell the police department you're out of town, they come see your house, whatever, to check a little extra vigilance. Can people, Nick, if people go out of town for the winter, can they sort of get in the system that they are away and it would be extra sensitive to water use in that house?
So the system would be an online access, so you could access it anywhere. Maybe Kyle, would you like to speak to the customer portal? I have our consultant speak to some of the benefits of the customer portal.
Yeah, I'm not thinking so much, Tim, about the customer going onto the portal. I'm talking about the village identifying that a home that has been, that the resident has proactively gone to the department and said, I'm going to be away for 6 months. Can you keep a special eye on my water usage?
Yes.
So I don't know how many people are going to go on the portal.
The new system would have the village, on the village side itself, we would have more data as to what's going on at the individual meters as well. So we could see if there is, you could set alerts for each account and each meter that would email if there's any type of unusual usage, and you could set those parameters as to what you would want to see.
Okay, that's a nice feature. And then I wanted to ask a little bit, just following up on Trustee Dahlman's questions, because I had some of the same questions on the useful life. Tina, I was thinking more, what happens after 15 years? So we're saying the useful life of these meters is 15 years and the batteries are 20 years. So what happens then? Are we going into a new infrastructure program? We're replacing all the meters again and just recontracting? Are we doing that 2 or 3 years in advance? Or what's the transition look like for this kind of project?
So once it hits the useful life of the project with the meters, we would then have to start replacing the meters once they hit their end of life. And at that time, we would evaluate the system and see, is it, still operating effectively? Do we want to, is there new technology out there that we would want to? We would have to evaluate that at that time.
And we would do that starting year 12, 13? What would be the...
Well, the warranty period goes for 15 years. So I would think that would be probably about the time that you'd want to start evaluating how the system is functioning, and if you're still getting what you want out of the system, or if there's, like I said, new technology available that's more advanced.
Okay, it could be. So Tina, I guess the answer is it could be obsolete by that point, but maybe we're committing for 15 years.
Trustee Dearborn, one thing I would say is that by the village waiting, as long as we have, what generation are we now at AMI? Third, fourth generation at this point? And you're looking at, on the long end, these meters could go 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And then the meter inventory that we have now, we're constantly replacing those as they start to fail. So it's, some of it is a cost of doing business, but I think at year 15, 13 to 15 years is when we'd start to say, okay, is it time to go to the next level of technology, or is it pretty much handling what we need to do? You got your consultant there once.
Yeah, and maybe if this helps too, is the contract term is 15 years. The IRS is about 10 on electric meters, which feels like, man, that's a really short time. So does that really align with the contract? Our useful life really is longer than 15 years. The water module battery is 20. What you really get from that is a longer lifespan on the battery technology, on the entire system. And really from a deployment standpoint, from a realistic standpoint, what we're really doing is you look at year 12, you look at year 13, and by that time, 6G may be out, 7G. This system is really built on, you have that software component as well, and you can start to interchange now that next advancement without having to replace that 4G module that's going in today. So you have now a more, I'll call it a hybrid system that you don't have to rip and replace. It's simply now a next advancement through that. So when you get to the end of the life of, say, this contract, it's written in a way that you will just auto-renew that contract year over year until you decide, hey, look, I want to renegotiate a longer-term contract. I want to go to everything from a 7G network, whatever that next technology will be, or I want to continue on with a year-over-year contract. It gives you some flexibility as you get towards, call it the end of life of this current technology, to transition without having to necessarily do that rip and replace again. It's a, how far out on that horizon can we look without seeing where that is, or maybe a better way is to say, let's get you future ready, not future proof. Future proof isn't something that we can do. So let's get you future ready and have a transition plan for it. And this is really one that gets you pretty flexible in that.
So the contract does have a year over year, some kind of a rate, consumer price index escalation.
Correct.
Each year after 15 and so on, which is really terrific because obviously the savings just become that much more extensive the longer the system stays in place.
You bet. The term right now is you're locked in. There's no price increase for the first 3 years on all equipment and all software. And then after that, it's based on the CPI index. So we do have a metric that we're gonna benchmark it against. So they're not gonna raise anything just 1,000%, 1,000,000%. There is at least a benchmark that we can point to that says here is then also that escalation piece, because we don't want runaway costs for you. We want Honeywell to stay in business, certainly, but we don't want them to gouge you either. So that's, again, while you're rolling it out, you're not going to see any price increases from them, from any equipment, or for your software. Then going forward, you order new equipment, you order something new, part of that contract is just simply looking at a CPI increase. Replacement meters that Nick and his team need, those are based off a 15-year contract. So you're getting the warranty that's included in that contract on new equipment. It's just, we just have to get a quote.
Okay. And my last question, I apologize for the time here, but Nick, on the, if people currently have solar and they have bidirectional meters that they're using, are these new meters, they would obviously accommodate that. There was something in there that talked about the interconnected solar customer output. So I'm assuming that if we expand, if residents expand their use of solar or other, other forms of electricity supply, that these meters can accommodate all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Our current style of meter can do that. We just do it manually. It's a manual exercise. So right now, every 2 months, we look at how much power that resident has put back on our grid and give them a bill credit for it. It would just mean that we'd have more visibility into that on an ongoing basis. So instead of being able to see it every 2 months, we'd see it every single day.
Got it.
And
That's
they would
it's
be able
really
to see that too on-
slick system. Yeah,
Yes.
nice.
Yep.
Nice.
Is that it, Bob?
That's it, Chris. I'm
Okay.
done.
1 second. Of course we do. I will now call for public comment. Would anybody in the audience like to speak on this issue?
Well, first of all, when I became chairman of the Environmental Commission in 2009, Brian and I talked about this. So it's wonderful to see you getting here now, because it's really, really important. If other people talking about energy had been here, they would have been even more excited about this than I am, because this is really the gateway to be able to use real-time pricing, which then allows you to, the customers then can choose to use their energy at night when the prices are lower and not use it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in August when they're really, really high. So this is a great idea, and I commend you for doing this. It's wonderful. The one thing I was wondering, does this allow any bi-directional control? That was a question. Can the town throttle everybody down in town, or is this only information out from the actual user?
So I think what you're referring to is demand response, which is something that AMI can do, can help the village do. It's something that we'd have to explore long term. What that effectively means is if we get notified that the price of power is really high, you can engage the residents or the businesses to help you shave the peak. So turn off your appliances at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday. You can do that. It's just something the village would have to develop that program, but the meters would allow us to have that capability to implement a demand response.
Communicate with them, but can you actually throttle down?
I don't think that would be the intent. It would more be on a voluntary basis. We'd give that price signal to the residents, saying, hey, prices are going to be really high this Tuesday. If you'd like to help us reduce our peak, these are the steps you would take.
So, thank you very much.
Yep.
One final comment. We went through a rather arduous discussion and computation to try and figure out whether or not we could compensate people in town who had solar power if they actually saved the town money when it was costing 40 cents a kilowatt hour. We got it was a very unfortunate situation with one of our past presidents. But anyway, this system will allow us to do that, to really compensate people for putting their solar power in, because they really save the town a lot of money at 40 cents a kilowatt hour.
We do have net metering now. It's just not all year long.
What I mean is that you can do it by the minute now. Yeah, which is really wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we can move through both of these in fairly quick order. So let's see here. Our first item this evening is Resolution R24-2025, which is the contract with Honeywell. May I have a motion to adopt Resolution number R24-2025?
So moved.
Second.
That's a roll call vote.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
That motion carries, thank you. And then the second resolution is the contract related to Power Systems Engineering for services. That's resolution number R28-2025. May I have a motion to adopt that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
That's a roll call vote.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Awesome. That resolution carries, thank you. All right, moving forward, item C, resolution number R2025, approving an agreement with Stanley Consultants, Inc. for engineering services for generation replacement study. Tonight, council will consider an agreement utilizing consultants to assist staff in presenting the generation replacement study to end steam generation in 2027. And Nick is back at the podium to move this one along. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Yes, so I'm back up here again. Pleased to present to you consideration for our contract award for the generation replacement study. So what I'll talk about tonight is the history of generation in the village, talk to you about our current fleet and the redundancy that the village has based on that fleet, the planning horizon for this project, which will lend why we're pursuing this right now, the scope of the RFP, more about Stanley and Associates, who is our selected vendor, and lastly, I'll ask for your recommendation on the contract. So the history of generation in the village, the water plant started providing potable water to our residents in 1893. The electric plant started in 1900, primarily to serve the water plant as well as some small-scale street lighting. Lighting prior to that was kerosene lanterns. From 1893 to 1972, Winnetka had a water tower. It was at the dead end of Coal Bunker Drive. You may have seen pictures of it from the Historical Society. That was torn down in 1972. And since then, the water system relies fully on a pump system for pressure. So we have pumps down at the water plant on the lakefront that pressurize the system. We also have a reservoir on Willow Road with pumps that helps maintain that pressure throughout the system, as well as down south of Winnetka Avenue. But what that effectively means is that without a water tower, if there is no power, there is no water. So part of the generation portfolio at the plant is to support the water system, which is the crux of what we're going to get to tonight. Generation was added to the village as the load grew, so as residents and businesses established themselves, generation grew and grew and grew. The electric plant did run around the clock until 1994. Since then, it only runs intermittently as more of a peaker basis when prices of electricity are high. The boilers at the plant ran on coal until the 1990s when they were converted to natural gas. And from 1970 to 2022, we've added ties to the ComEd transmission system at 138 kV and at 12 kV on the distribution system. So you may recall as late as 2022 is when we commissioned our 30 MVA transformer at the Northfield substation. That gave us another point of redundancy for the village. And since 1984, Winnetka has been a member of IMEA and had our generation capacity dedicated to them. We were receiving about $1.4 million annually as a credit on our bill through IMEA. That is now $1 million after the retirement of turbine number 4. Again, that's money received from IMEA as a credit for our capacity. So our current fleet, we currently have 22 megawatts of combined capacity. 17 megawatts of that is steam turbines driven by natural gas boilers. The average age of that equipment is 65 years. You may recall some of this material previously from the decision you helped us make back at the start of 2024, which was to retire steam generation effective 2026-27. The equipment, just the ongoing cost of maintaining and pushing capital into the system just did not make financial sense. You can see this is turbine number 4 with the lid taken off. So essentially, you push high pressure steam through these fins. It spins at a high enough RPM to turn this alternator, for lack of a better term, to generate electricity. The remaining 5 megawatts of capacity at the plant is in the form of diesel engines. So we have 2.5 megawatt diesel engines from 1979. The reason that we have 2 is, again, for redundancy. So if you have to take one out of service to change the oil, change the air filter, change all the spark plugs, you want to have another unit ready to go in case we were to lose power from ComEd. So that's the rationale for having 2 units, is again it's a belt and suspenders approach to backing up the water system. Again, the diesels are the primary backup. So in the event we were to lose power from ComEd, the expectation is that the plant operators would fire up one or both of these units to restore power and pressure in the system as soon as possible. Our current air permit with the Illinois EPA is valid through 2029, which lends itself to the planning horizon that I'll talk about here shortly. The last point on the redundancy, Winnetka, I will say, is extremely well positioned based on our load and based on the capacity that we have. So if you see on the right there, we have about a 40 megawatt peak demand for the village. In terms of capacity, we have two 30 MVA megawatt transformers that tie into the transmission system, ComEd transmission system. We currently have the 22 megawatt plant, and we have 21 megawatts of 12 kV ComEd ties. So we have over 100 megawatts of capacity for a 40 megawatt load. So it's extremely well diversified. It's a very valuable asset for the village. And when we're talking about what does the village really need, this is something you've seen from our December study session with Mr. Pruitt. This is kind of a stacked chart of the village peaks. So you see on the far left end, that's that 40 megawatt, really hot day in the summer. It's been 90 degrees for 3 consecutive days. Everyone's got their air conditioning on. That's when we really hit that peak. But throughout the year, you can see on average, we really don't use that much. The table at the bottom shows that throughout the year, we use at least 13 megawatts. We would need 13 megawatts of capacity to support the system throughout the year. And then as you go down, you'll see we only really need the full capacity for 1 week of the year. Again, you're talking about a really hot summer day. We need that 35 megawatts. But the bulk of the system throughout the majority of the year could be supported with somewhere between 20 and 30 megawatts of capacity. So the planning horizon, why are we asking you to consider this right now? So our understanding of the planning horizon is this is a 5-year process. The generation study would take place through Q1 of Q3 of this year. We'd bring those results to you at the end of this calendar year. You'd provide us direction. Assuming we successfully find a solution that works for the village, the permitting process for that new generation would start in Q1 of 2026. Our understanding from our previous air permit application, that's a 2-year process, at least a 2-year process. And that was before any possible change to state or federal regulations, staffing changes at the Illinois EPA. It was at a minimum a 2-year process. So that's the crux of why we're starting this so soon. And the procurement of the equipment itself is likely a 18-month to 2-year process. Again, we're working towards our end of year 2029 goal. And that's really why we're starting this process now in 2025. And again, the goal would be to have whatever form of generation you direct us to, would have that installed and commissioned by the end of 2029. Again, some further context, our current air permit is valid through the end of 2029. We have the rights currently for the next 5 years to replace the capacity from turbine number 4, which was 9 megawatts. You could argue that we would likewise obtain a similar waiver for the other units that are set to retire in 2027, which would be about 31 megawatts total. And just a point of fact, municipally owned generation units that are less than 25 megawatts on a per unit basis are not subject to the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which drives the greenhouse gas reductions. That's on a per unit basis, so even if our total generating capacity is greater than 25, as long as each individual unit is less than 25, it's not subject to CEJA. So what is the scope of the study that we're asking you to consider tonight? Really boils down to an equipment screening analysis, so looking at what solutions are out there, what is a good fit for the village, ensuring regulatory compliance and permitting. Regulations change constantly. The contractor we've selected works in this space and they have a good feel for the landscape of how things are and how things possibly could change in the next 5 years. Assisting us in getting us through the permit. It's a very lengthy process, a lot of back and forth with the state of Illinois. The consultant would assist us with that. Really, it boils down to looking at the table below, which are 5 options, looking at all those and then shortlisting 2 to provide deliverables. The deliverables would be an engineered probable cost of construction. That'll help us develop the 5-year CIP that we'll bring to you later this year. Projected annual impact to the electric fund for the next 15 years. So we want to get a good handle of not just the installation and commissioning costs, but what are the projected maintenance costs of these units for the next 15 years so we can adequately plan for that. And lastly, an implementation plan. So how do you get these units installed? Be it at the power plant or at our facility on Willow, how are you physically going to construct these solutions? So this is all within the scope of the study. The solutions I have here at the bottom table really look at the 2 possible areas we identified for generation are either at the plant, which would be right where the water production is, or alternatively, if there's not space or it's not feasible, we have permission from the IPA to install that generation at the yards. As long as it's physically connected via wires to the power plant, that generation could theoretically be at the yards at 1390 Willow. When you're talking about this breakdown of capacity, really you're talking about how well diversified we want to be, how much we think we can get economically. A big part of this exercise is determining how much this is all going to cost, the payback period, possible capacity credits that would allow us to offset some of these costs. So I can't say now if the solution is 10 or if the solution is 30. That's the point of the study. But we're going to run at least 2 of these all the way to the ground to get some good data to bring back to you. We're also looking at diversifying the fuel sources. Again, this is all about planning, diversification, belts on top of suspenders. You can use diesel or natural gas, so you're not constrained during the winter. North Shore Gas puts constraints on your gas use, so you could alternatively use diesel instead, so you're not paying congestion charges on natural gas. And then diversifying between quick start and fast start. So the difference here is quick start is, for lack of a better term, you turn the key in the ignition and the unit's on in less than 2 minutes, which if we're talking about backing up the water system, that's an ideal scenario. We want water pressure back in the system as soon as possible. The other alternative is fast start, which is up and running in less than 30 minutes. So our current technology with the steam-driven turbines, it takes about 8 hours to produce the steam to run the turbines. And when you're talking about selling this capacity into the market, which would be one of our ancillary goals, it's very hard to time the market when it takes 8 hours to bring something up to speed. So something that starts faster can allow us to better leverage that capacity in the market. So talking now about Stanley & Associates, which was the vendor that was selected through the RFP evaluation process. They're local. They're based in Chicago. They've been in business for over 100 years. They have provided comprehensive services for over 100 plus public power clients. They have 5,000 megawatts of steam turbine generation under their belt. They have over 1,400 megawatts of solar and energy storage under their belt. Winnetka has good previous project experience with Stanley. We've leveraged their services in the past and have good things to say about that. Some recent projects of note, similar size and scale to Winnetka, a 30 megawatt facility in Hastings, power generation, 25 to 50 megawatt peaking generator plant in Henderson, Kentucky, and then a 5 megawatt installation at Texas A&M University. So these are kind of similar size scope to what we'd be seeking. And we did conduct reference checks with these vendors and got good feedback on Stanley's performance. One thing I'll go back and mention, since I mentioned solar there, another thing we looked at in this capacity was renewable resources. We've talked about this in the context of the MDR option. So part of the total capacity would be, a portion of that would be in renewables. So what can the village leverage in terms of on-site capacity, be it solar or other storage mechanisms, to increase the renewable resource behind the meter within the village. So that's part of the scope of work as well. I wanted to mention that. So just closing comments, then I'll ask for your recommendation and take questions. Power generation has existed in the village for 125 years. I think you should consider it a proud history, something that is unique to the village. At a minimum, we know we're always going to need small generation to back up the water system and pressurize the distribution system. The only alternative to that is a water tower. So I probably don't need to say much more than that. It has always set us apart from our neighbors, the ability to support the water system and also vital village services. So the way the system's currently constructed now, the plant can not only support the water system, but also public safety, the village yards, the AT&T building, which restores communications throughout the village. So there's some pretty key infrastructure that's directly tied into the power plant that would provide us some great redundancy within the system. Again, you're not relying strictly on ComEd for your delivery. It presents the opportunity to lower the power bill for the village through capacity payments with whatever path is chosen in that respect. At the end of the day, generation is capacity for the village that can be sold into the marketplace. That is an opportunity for the village. The opportunity exists to explore either more efficient thermal resources and carbon-free resources as well. And with that, I ask for your consideration to award the contract to Stanley & Associates for the generation study. And with that, I'll take questions.
Any questions for Nick?
Well, Nick, I'll be brief here. Good job on this study here. The one thing that's not mentioned, but it was in the report, was this contract, the cost of the contract.
Yes.
And it was considerably more than what was budgeted. I wanted to find out from you if the scope of the project ended up more expansive than what was considered during budgeting. And then you're eliminating some capital expenditure, some piece of equipment, some steam, something or other, and that you don't think is needed to be replaced. And I just wanted to get a little color on that as well.
Yeah, so we budgeted about $125,000 in the fiscal year 25 budget. When we got the RFP results back in, it wasn't just Stanley, they were consistently all above the budget estimate. So I think there's just the scope of the study just exceeded what we had originally planned for in the budget. So that was the case across the board. The offset that you identified that was in the staff report is for an auxiliary system that helps support the steam generation. We talked to our staff and the superintendent that runs the electric plant, and we have good reason to believe that equipment can make it for 2 more seasons, and that would allow us to defer that expense.
So the cost of this contract, in the end, you and your team felt was legitimate versus, well, it was rational relative to what was originally expected, just based on the work is just more intensive. Is that what we're getting into here?
Yeah, based on the amount of hours that are required, again, across the board, the hours requirement from all the vendors, we feel it's warranted, given the amount of information we're asking them to look at and investigate. We feel it's an appropriate cost.
Okay.
Others? I don't have any takers. Rob, how about you? No takers, okay. All right, thanks, Nick.
Yep.
I'll open it up for public comment, but there's nobody in the room. But I need to do it anyway. I'll now close public comment. And any conversations here? We ready to vote?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay. All right, this is resolution number R25, 2025, approving an agreement with Stanley Consultants for engineering services. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
That's a roll call vote?
Trustee Albinson? Yes. Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thanks, Nick. That was good work, definitely. Little dry, but we're used to that, so.
That's a compliment.
You're following in your predecessor's footsteps. Nice job.
What was his name again?
So, all right, we'll move forward here then. Item 11, appointments, there are none. Item 12, closed session, there is none. Item 13, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
That's a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thanks a lot.
Good night, everybody.
Take it easy,
Yeah.
guys.
Night.